getting started now. So welcome everybody to our ITE-ANZ webinar. We're really glad that you could join us today. I'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge the Australian Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders people as the first inhabitants of the nation and the national custodians of the land where we live, learn, and work. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We acknowledge and respect the Treaty of Waitangi and Maori as original people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and we acknowledge any people of Indigenous descent who are joining us here today. For those who may be joining us for the first time, ITE is a part of a global organization, and it focuses on research, learning, and networking for people with a passion and interest in all things transport. We're always accepting new members and encourage everyone to join so they don't miss out on any future events. We'd like to also take the time to acknowledge our sponsors and thank them for allowing us to provide great events, awards, and opportunities for all of our members. And I would like to just say that if you have any questions for our presenter, to just drop them into the chat box. And at the end of the presentation, we'll go through some of them and have a bit of a discussion. So yeah. And now just to present today's presenter. So the UN Office for Project Services, also known as UNOPS, focuses on implementing projects which help build better lives, enable countries to achieve peace and sustainable development through the UN Sustainable Development Goals. AFIC joined the United Nations Project of Services in 2014 after completing a PhD in Sustainable Development at UNSW in Sydney. Prior to joining UNOPS, AFIC spent 5 years in Sydney as part of a researcher in the Faculty of Built Environment. His research work was focused on sustainability issues for developing countries in Southeast Asia. Before moving to Australia, AFIC spent 4 years as a lecturer at the Faculty of Architecture, Planning and Surveying, MARA University of Technology in Malaysia. His current role has taken him to UNOPS Afghanistan country office, where he works as an infrastructure program management specialist. In his role, he is involved in supporting the Afghanistan office and managing sustainable infrastructure programs and projects. AFIC has invaluable experience working with the diverse range of stakeholders on projects that directly impact some of the most vulnerable communities. And so without further ado, let me put up your presentation and I'll hand it over to AFIC.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to everyone in Australia. I'm Afik. Like Ilse said, I'm working with the United Nations Office of Project Services. I'm currently in Copenhagen, so it's very early. So please bear with me if I'm for us in Copenhagen. Thank you so much for having me today. Today I'll just I think this session's mostly it's about sharing out my own personal experience on the works that we've been doing with UNOPS. I've been doing with UNOPS and some of my experience working with these organizations where we try our best to actually help people in need in different parts of the world. We had the opportunity to actually supporting humanitarian and development efforts in a most challenging environment and places which give us quite significant experience and knowledge, not only in infrastructure in general, but also supporting different governments and our partners, especially our donors, in transport infrastructure. So to start, if we can move to the next slide. So I would like to introduce the organization that I work with. It's United Nations Office for Project Services. So it's a UN agency. I'm not so sure if some of you are aware or about the existence of these agencies. It's not as famous or well known as other UN agencies, but I think we have a good reasons for that. Like, for example, we're not as famous as UNICEF or WHO or UNHCR, which if we actually, when I say that, I think most people already know, somehow have an idea is what they're doing. But the reasons with that is like our mandate for United Nations is infrastructure procurements and project management, where we try to help governments and our partners. Some of them is actually UN agency itself to actually implement works on the ground. For example, if I can say it, like a simple example is that what we're doing is actually we helping our sisters agencies in United Nations like WHO or UNICEF. For example, with WHO, we help them to actually build and construct hospitals and clinics around the world during COVID-19. We participated in a lot of humanitarian response on COVID-19, where we helped WHO, UNICEF, and also UNFPA to actually build hospitals, COVID clinics, and centers. So that's why our communication strategies is not as big as huge as other UN agencies, because most of the times we supporting the governments and other UN agencies to deliver services on the ground. We delivered every year, we deliver more than 1,000 projects around the world. Last year, we delivered almost 3.4 billion worth of support to our partners. This is not only infrastructure projects, but also other types of projects. For example, technical advice on how to build infrastructure or how to do procurement in infrastructure. It's also related. We also manage quite significant amount of funds and grants to support country developments and humanitarian response. So if we can move to the next slide. So this is some of our expertise. Our main mandate for United Nations is to help our partners to implement infrastructure procurement and project management. But for the past few years, we also being entrusted to actually implement some of financial management and human resources support. And in some cases, we also do like turnkey types of projects where we not only implement and help the country or the governments of a country to implement infrastructure projects, but we also provide them with the required human resources and support them on financial management as well. For the next slide, it will focus on just our partners and the peoples that we work with mostly. So it's either, for example, most 58% of our engagements directly with the governments. It's either the governments of the countries that we're operating in, or the governments of the UN member states who provide funding. For example, we also implement projects for the government of Australia in different countries, like Papua New Guinea, before in Afghanistan as well, and and also a few different countries in Africa, South Pacific, and in Asia. And for the next slide, this is some of the works that we've done last year. This is summarized the types of works that we're doing, the impact that we provided to different communities around the world, and different outputs we produced for the year 2021. So you can see, like, we're not only infrastructure, but we're also providing support in terms of procurements and also different types of technical assistance and advice to the governments and the partners that we work with. So if we move to the next slide, we're slowly going to move into the infrastructure part, where we plan, design, construct, and maintain a wide range of sustainable and resilient infrastructure solution. It depends where we're operating in. We also operate in middle income countries or least development countries or country in fragile and conflict areas as well. So depends on the capacity of the country. So that's where we comes either as a technical advisor, sharing our knowledge, or we can also provide from the beginnings or the starts of the projects until the end, where we constantly working with the local counterparts and the local personnel to actually develop their capacity and understandings how to plan, manage, and operate infrastructure more efficiently, and then help the governments to actually achieve the sustainable development goals targets for their countries. Uh, for the next slide, this is where we will introduce like our engagements and our support in terms of transport infrastructure. So UNOPS help partners to design, rebuild and rehabilitate road, bridges, ports and airports in different countries. So our services have a very strong focus on resilience against risks associated with climate change and natural hazards. Inclusion, it's our priority in everything we do, including gender mainstreaming strategies in all our projects and program to ensure safe and affordable access to all and everyone is included, not only in the implementations process, but starting at the beginnings where we plan our projects as well. We want to make sure that in everything we do, environmental sustainability and social sustainability is also incorporated. So that's why we develop our own project management methodology that can address all of these issues and ensure that all the project team and project personnel understands that the most important things when we implement our projects is inclusions and how to make sure that people on the ground really understands the importance of it, and how to make sure that the infrastructures that we build can sustain for long and provide the services that needed for very long times. We also offer technical assistance and advisory services to improve transport infrastructure system for countries. And as a UN agencies, we need to make sure that we tailor all our engagements in different country with specific local context, understand the challenges, and provide the best solutions that we can to make sure that we can help government to address all the challenges on the ground. For the next slide is the different types of work that we do in UNOPS. We have extensive experience in infrastructure services, ranging from rehabilitating rural feeder road in Gambia to the constructions of a bridge connecting Costa Rica and Panama. We also supported the supervisory body for investment in public transport infrastructure of Peru, OCITRAN, in implementing Lima Metro System projects and also the expansions of Jorge Chavez International Airport. UNOPS, our team in Mexico, currently supporting the governments in the Mayan train projects, a new 1,500 kilometers intercity railway in southeastern Mexico, Yucatan Peninsula, by providing technical assistance to help them improve compliance with international standards and also supporting them in project management, tendering process, and design and constructions of railway infrastructure in Mexico. UNOPS also try our best to support the government and partners in assessing the needs of the community. We analyze at the start of every project, we try to analyze risks associated with climate change and help partners prioritize actions. This including actions related to the local community and how local community can be incorporated in our projects, and how gender initiatives and elements can also be included to achieve gender equality, and also to actually incorporate local communities to ensure that we provide the best impact we can, not only in terms of infrastructure assets that we produce, but in terms of how we can actually increase the capacity and the skills of the local community and local people to maintain the infrastructures that we built for them. So the next slide. Yeah, this is some of that I explained earlier, types of the works that we do, and we can move to next slides, and then we can introduce to the fragile context affected states. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So basically, this is an idea for us to actually share with you. We'll share the presentations later where all the participants can have a read through. So what is fragility and why it is so important for us to actually understand it, for us to actually operate in these types of environment. Fragility, if I can summarize it, is basically the government or the institutions within the country are not able to provide basic services to its people, and then the country have lack resources and does not understand how to react to shocks and stresses related to conflict, natural hazards, and climate change, and we and these types of governments are very dynamics and have very in terms of capacity, not able to actually provide basic services like healthcare, educations, or in some instances provide food security for its own people. I think we all know about conflicts, but when we talk about conflicts and fragility, we also cannot not talks about the violence itself. So that's why we want to make sure that all our project teams also understands what is these three main components in fragile conflicts states for us to actually implement projects or design the projects that will address and help the local community to survive or in the long run have a very strong skill and sustainability to actually support their livelihood. For the next slide. So we have been working in fragile conflict affected states since the establishments of the organizations. The organizations was established in early 90s. Then we realized that we need to operate and implement intervention differently in conflict affected states. Therefore, UNOPS a few years ago, with a few academic institutions, for example, this research that Road to Peace research was done with the Danish Institutes of International Studies and the Lund University in Sweden. We joined forces to establish a research on understanding issues around infrastructure and development in fragile conflict affected states. So that our works will provide greater impacts to the people that we want to serve, especially that people that are affected by conflicts and violence. The research has become the basis and our foundations in our interventions and guidance for implementations of infrastructure projects in fragile and conflict affected states. So move on to the next slide. It's basically why we need to do differently in fragile conflict and affected environments. It's AFCAS, fragile conflict affected states, present a critical development challenges that threatens efforts to end extreme poverty in both low and middle income countries. As the poverty rate decrease in most of the country around the world, but the poverty rates increase significantly in fragile conflict affected states. Research done by the World Bank in last year stated that up to 2/3 of the world extreme poor could live in fragile conflicts and violent settings. And conflicts also drive 80% of all humanitarian needs. And violent conflicts have spiked dramatically in the last decades, and the fragility landscapes is becoming more complex every year. And then COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated the world has exacerbated the issues, and it's become more serious. And the world has seen a series of massive setbacks. to stability in regions across the world, from Asia to Africa to Latin America, and Caribbeans, and more recently in Eastern European countries as well. This latest development add on a different multitude of risks affecting the people who live in fragile conflicts affected states. And this also affected their food insecurity, food security, and climate change impacts exacerbate the situations, and also rising equality, because due to demographic change and also socioeconomic impacts of COVID-19 make it worse as well. So if we can move to the next slide, we as humanitarians and development organizations have been working in conflict-affected environment for quite some times. If we can move to the next one. So with more than 25 years of experience in fragile and conflict-affected environments, I think our works with partners around the world to implement peace, humanitarian, and development projects in some of the most challenging places give us quite significant of knowledge and lessons that we can learn and share with different governments and our partners around the world. We trying our best to help build the foundations for a country to achieve peace with interventions that listed now in the screen. This is some of the things that we do in conflict affected states. And then we try to bring value for our partners during and after conflict. Move to the next slide. So this is some of the ongoings and also completed projects in different parts of the world in fragile and conflict affected states. Is just want to share that over 68% of UNOP's global portfolio delivered across 64 countries that are qualified in fragile conflict situation. 75% of our infrastructure portfolio last year delivered in fragile states, and UNOPS delivered almost 900 million worth of projects across fragile states around the world, which give us opportunity to collect knowledge and lessons from different parts of the world, and for us to actually better understand how to operate in these countries. And we hope that when we implement projects and programs in these types of situations, we will do better every day in the future. Moving on, we want to focus on the importance of transport infrastructure for peace building. Based on our own experience, comprehensive data gatherings, what we did together with academic institutions and donor communities, we understand that peace building is an ongoing process. It begins long before conflict takes place. When implemented with wider reform, we think that transport infrastructure investment can support long-term peace and resilience by enabling access to basic services, and has the potential to foster structural changes that reduce the risk of violence and promote sustainable development. On the other hand, if infrastructure not planned, operate properly, it can hinder peace building. If services are lacking, or if infrastructure is not able to protect community. We understand that poor plan, design, and implementation infrastructure intervention can also fuel tensions and can make conflicts extend to different parts of the countries, because poorly planned, design, implemented infrastructure will reinforce an inequitable environment. Investments that fail to account for the complex interactions that infrastructure has with fragility risk contributing to prolonged instability. So that's why UNOPS advocate for holistic and evidence-based approach to infrastructure. We will continue to actually build infrastructures that contribute to peace buildings. How are we doing that? For example, that in a lot of the countries that we're operating in, the government that we collaborating with, whether the governments of the countries or the partners, usually just focusing on an actual assets itself. For example, that if we want to build road, we just focusing on the outputs, where we want to complete it and then move on to another projects, or they want to move on to another projects. As long as like we completed the road, that's enough. But what we're trying to do is that to develop their knowledge that infrastructure is not just an asset, is a system, and there is also an institution to support institutions and knowledge to actually support the sustainability of the infrastructure itself. Lots of countries that we're operating in, especially in the fragile conflict affected situation, they do not have a proper institution to regulate and establish policy, understand the financing processes, and the legal framework to support the infrastructure asset. Most of the countries doesn't have an understandings on how to manage and operate the infrastructure after the completions of the projects. There's no proper maintenance, there's no proper understandings on how to make sure the infrastructure can last for very long times. And we also realize that there's not enough knowledge within the countries, which is the human resource that can engage within the system and has the knowledge to carry out actions that required in the planning, creations, operations, and maintenance of the systems. Lacks of technical experts, academics, and researchers within the countries doesn't have the capacity to provide guidance to the governments to ensure that the infrastructure can continue operating and provide services to the peoples in the country. So if we move to the next slide, so that's what we're trying to do in our engagement, try to educate governments that infrastructure is not just an asset. We need to have institutions and knowledge to be able to for infrastructure to benefit the local peoples and the local community and to provide services that it's required. So if we move to the next slide. So part of it, we, based on extensive experience implementing infrastructure work in this context, we assist the government in shifting their infrastructure planning, delivery, and management approach to one that is evidence-based. And we develop capacity for the government to really understand what is the capacity gap for them to actually improve infrastructure services. Through our capacity assessment, for instance, we develop a capacity assessment tool for infrastructure to help countries facilitate better infrastructure. We help government identify gap in their ability to plan, deliver, and manage their infrastructure system. By tackling this gap and understanding what is missing in their operations and management of the infrastructure, we hope it can ultimately prevent the failure of infrastructure, and the infrastructure can continue provide services needed and then support the peace building process of the country. So if you can move to the next slide. So we developed the capacity assessment tool for infrastructure for our government partners, was to have this tool can be used to assess the institutions and knowledge components of infrastructure system. It's identified strength and gap in current capacity, either at national level, at regional levels, or provincial level, to plan, deliver, and manage sustainable, resilient, and inclusive infrastructure system. The tool is designed to help government develop sustainable, resilience, and inclusive infrastructure by identifying the main gaps in their capacity to plan, deliver, and manage infrastructure systems, especially on the knowledge and institution components. So as a simple tool for the government to use and help them to understand, if we can move to the next slide, it covers infrastructure planning, delivery, and management. All these tools the different indicators and different questions that we ask to the governments as parts of this tool can help the government understands from a simple what is missing in their plannings. Do they have like the capacity in to establish the infrastructure plans, or do they have the capacity to know and understands what needs to establish the need assessment, so they can develop infrastructure that provide benefits to the local communities. Moving on to the next slide. So we developed this tool to make sure that we have the common language, and then creating benchmark for enhancement. And the most important things is that with understandings of the gap and what's missing in the infrastructure development process and or infrastructure management, they can also use this as a strong point for them to actually request for financing and also support them to actually establish a evidence-based types of proposal for them to go to the donor and ask them to help in terms of financings as well, since they have really strong bases and they really understand where they need to improve in infrastructure development process. Uh, uh, if we can go to the next slide. So another important things that we need to consider and we need to implement in all of our projects and programs in fragile conflict affected states is conflict sensitivity. So our project staff and our personnel will need to adhere to all these conflict sensitivity guidance and guidelines that established within the organizations. So we established these guidelines to ensure that everyone is aware about the situations on the countries and how to tailorize our projects and interventions with the local context that can help for us to actually achieve a better impact in our interventions. And the next one, we also established a guidance or integrated gender into infrastructure development. This is an example from Asia and the Pacific. We collaborate with UN Women to actually establish this guidance, understand what can be done in the context of fragile conflicts and affected states on how to actually mainstream gender and to ensure that we include also the needs from the peoples and include and engage with people who are socially excluded, such as minorities group, people living with disability, youth and elderly, and we try our best to also engage with different groups like LGBTQ communities and women's, man, boy, and girls in our planning process, and also include them in our implementation process as well. And for the next slide, we also understand that it's quite significant amount of organization and also agencies that also working to improve interventions and provide the best solutions that they can to fragile conflict affected states. Our partner and our colleague in Asian Development Bank and the World Bank have established a quite comprehensive research and teams to really understand on how to work better in fragile conflict affected situations or environments or states. So we also try our best to take their ideas and knowledge to implement their suggestion for us to better support the people in needs on the ground. For example, is that we have to ensure that the things that we need to do is we have to ensure equal attentions to active conflicts and institutions fragility, because a lot of the when new conflict happenings around the world, a lot of most of the times we forgetting the past conflicts and not focusing on the peoples who left behind on the ground. The examples that I can share is that when the war started in Ukraine, lots of attentions was focusing on Ukraine, and then it's like there's not much support that we receive for the people of Afghanistan or Syria and Yemen that's still struggling and continue need support from international organization. So we want to make sure that we still continue advocating for them to make sure that everyone's have a chance to improve their life, and also to support the governments and the local community on the ground on the peace buildings on the peace building. We agreed with what's being established in the report of ADB and World Banks, that to build resilience in fragile conflict affected states, we need to ensure that we engage with the local community, develop their capacity, and ensuring they understand that infrastructure is not just physical assets. For them, for infrastructure to continue providing supports and services for the people of the country, we need to make sure that we develop their capacities to understand on how to manage and operate infrastructure properly. We also, the most important things that everyone should understand when operating in these situations is that we cannot do everything ourselves. We need to continue, coordinate, and engage with different stakeholders who have other types of specialization. So we need to continue working together. For example, is that might not, there's still lots of things that we need to learn on gender mainstreamings and gender issues. So we need to continue working with different UN agencies that have advanced knowledge on this, the gender specialists or GBV specialists in different organizations, to make sure that we address all the challenges within the country. So it is very important for us to continue dialogues and sharing knowledge with each other for us to actually better understand the context and give the solutions that needed for the people in fragile conflict affected states. Better coordinations as well among all humanitarian partners and development stakeholders. A lot of times when we arrive in the country or in the specific locations or provinces, lots of agencies doing the same exact things with the same community and left behind the communities that not being reached yet for support. So it is very important for us to really understand the coordinations mechanisms is very important for us to ensure that no one's left behind in the countries that we're trying to help, and everyone's will be supported and helped to achieve peace and stability. And of course, when we work in the country like this, it is very important for us to understand local context and sensitivity. We will continue engaging with the local community at the beginning of our projects, during our implementations, and ensuring when we ensure that they know and understands how to manage and operate infrastructure properly for them, for the infrastructure to operate and provide services needed in the future. So for the next one, I'll try to actually give some examples of our work in different countries. For example, for this project is a construction road to increase food security in South Sudan. What I would like to highlight for this project is that this project is a very strong community engagement from the beginnings. We met with the local community at the very beginning of the projects, where we sit together with them and understand the process. Some of our staff even stay with them for days to really understand how the way that they do their life, the way that they their life in a day, to make sure that like we're providing the significant we provided the peoples on the ground the supports that need, and we design the infrastructures that help them to actually to that benefit them and make sure that their daily life will get easier on this. For the next one, we also we hired the local community to help us develop road infrastructure in Central African Republic. This also have a very strong gender components, where we work together with gender specialists to actually understand what is the best interventions that we can introduce there's no capacity in the areas that we're operating in. So the first few months of the projects is just capacity developments for the government personnel, and also we train the local communities to be the construction laborer, where we also spend quite significant amount of time to develop their skills in construction. We also provide a few different trainings for the local contractors to make sure that they understand about health and safety, and how to make sure gender is being implemented in the process of developments of the infrastructure. So we also have a few different gender trainings, and ask our contractors and implementations partner to develop gender action plans, where we monitor we monitor it every quarter, and then we want to make sure that it's not just the plan, but they also implement it like during the operational parts of the project. For the next one, we help the people of Sudan to this is like the projects that not only we buildings transport infrastructure, but out of that we help them with water supply system, and also enhance their the constructions of their homes as well. So we engage with the local community, and then we incorporate them. We incorporate all the feedback from them to actually provide, or all the feedback that we receive from the local community, we actually incorporate in our project implementation plan, and try to actually hear their voice and include all the ideas within our projects as well. So in all our projects, we also try to actually incorporate all the things that I said earlier, like where we engage with the governments, develop their capacity on understanding infrastructure. It's beyond infrastructure assets, so then they can also develop their capacities on how to maintain their infrastructure, and also how to make sure that there's enough human resources on the ground to do the job and manage and operate it as well. Another project, the next one, is part of rehabilitations of war-affected infrastructure in Iraq. So we support the local government by providing significant amounts of infrastructure. It's guided by need-based approach. The project focuses on building resilient and improving basic living conditions of the rural area. We work very closely with the government to actually establish a proper management and operation plan for all the infrastructure that we build. So when we completed the projects, they have a really clear guidance on how to operate and manage that the infrastructure that we build, so the infrastructure can continue to provide services that they needed for very long periods of time. We also train the local governments in on how to actually request funding for operations and maintenance through their from their central governments and from international donors. So we help them to establish a proposal, understand, and from that proposals, we also teach them on how to do an assessment for infrastructure, so they know, like when they propose, they have a strong evidence that they need the funding for them to continue to operate the infrastructure for their communities. And the next one. So this is the projects that we implement in Colombia. So in lots of areas and in lots of countries that we're operating in, we collaborate with other UN agencies. For example, UNMAS, the United Nations Mine Action Services. So for them, for us to actually for them to actually help us to actually clear the area, So once the area is cleared and approved by them for us to actually continue with infrastructure development, and then we implement our intervention. So their assessment and their support in addressing the issues related to explosive legacies in conflicts. This is examples in Colombia. We also uh, uh, work with them very closely in Afghanistan and Iraq to make sure is that like before we develop our infrastructure, the area is free from mines, and then the people can work in the areas that free from mines. So the main points that we want to show here is that collaborations and also coordinations among partners is very important for us to actually do our work properly. Like I said, it's like we can't do everything by ourselves, but we also have other agencies and organizations that works on the ground that can help us to actually better providing a better impact to the local community. And then for the next one, this is the projects that we implemented in Afghanistan. The project have very strong gender mainstreaming strategy. The government of Sweden, who are the donor for these projects, explicitly say to us that we need to make sure that lots of people who hired, not only for the project teams, but also the people who working on the construction works. We need to try our best to engage with the female community members. So we did a lot of community engagements at the beginnings of the projects. We go and engage with the community leaders, go to different villages, and establish what we call local road user committee. This committee is mostly led by women to understand how women can be parts of construction projects or infrastructure projects in the countries, and how this can actually contribute to better sustainability of infrastructure. The local road user committees that we hired for the constructions, we also train them on how to maintain the rural road that we built for them, to make sure that these roads can be used for all weather conditions throughout the year. So it opens to make sure that like the kids can continue go to schools, their agriculture products can still reach market at an efficient time, and also lots of people can still use the road even during harsh weather to go to for helps and medical support. So it is a very interesting project where we also hired under these projects we established what we call a junior talent program, where we hired newly graduated female engineers and surveyors who mostly doesn't have opportunity to work in constructions or have experience in construction to work with us as a junior within this program, where they do where we did like on the job training for them, and then later on we also place them in different construction companies and continue working with other agencies in Afghanistan as well, to ensure that the talents will be retained and our female professionals can continue to grow in Afghanistan. And the next slide. Despite of all of the things that I share with all of you, there's still lots of challenges during our implementations in fragile conflict affected states. The political uncertainty and security remains the main issues. We need to stay agile every time. We need to be able to actually change and try to actually make our operation to adapt at different situation. This is still one of the biggest challenge, because sometimes it will the implementations will take longer, or we're not able to implement in certain circumstances. So we need to try our best to continue coordinations and engagements with different stakeholders, so then we can actually implement efficiently on the ground. Climate change remain the issues, with despite of different priorities on the fragile conflict affected states that we need to address. We need to make sure that government uh, remain interested to actually address the climate change risk as well. So that's why we're trying our best to educate the governments. Like, if you want an infrastructure that will are resilient, we need to make sure that we also incorporate elements that address climate change risk and issues. Most of the time, donor come with like their own interests and solutions and suggestions. We need to educate as well donor community on like what is currently needed on the ground, rather than just come with a solution. We That's why community engagements is very important for us to really understand the situations on the ground and the needs on the ground. So for us to actually use that as the evidence for us to go back to the donor communities and suggest the best solutions for the people. Uh, there are so many focus within the government, especially in fragile conflict affected states for them. So we need to make sure that they remain focus on providing the best services for the local community. Gender and gender-based violence is also one of the challenges that we need to address. So that's why in every engagement and solutions that we're trying to do, we try to make sure that we incorporate that in our engagement, to make sure that we continue sharing knowledge and services provided for the people on the ground, and make sure that they really understand why we need to continue engage with local communities, and different people from different backgrounds need to be parts of the infrastructure development process. And yeah, the last one before I finish, this is some of the more additional resources that we establish within our organizations on related to conflict affected environment, that you can also check and have a look. Yeah, thank you so much. I think I've been talking so much for the past few minutes. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yes, we are running a little bit short on time, but hopefully we can get just through some, maybe go over 5 minutes. So just one of the questions, how do you ensure that the community consultations are diverse and reflect the community, especially in places like Afghanistan, where women are often excluded? So how are you making sure that the consultations are reflective of the community?
Yeah, one of the things that we make sure that we have within our project teams is to hire community mobilizer to engage with the team. It's the most important things for us to actually build trust, so we can engage with them, and hear their voices. So from what they give us, we make sure that we incorporating in our plannings and project implementations, and also continue to engage with them after the projects as well. So our community mobilizer will engage not only with the local communities, but also the community leaders, and also the peoples who have a lot of experience and understand the issues of the communities. So when we make sure that we incorporate all of the ideas from the local communities, and then their voice is heard. We have different sessions where we make sure that during community consultations, we incorporate like women's, people with disability is also included. Academic institutions is also there to actually have some say as well. And then ensure men, women, and boys and girls are heard by just go to them and asking them their opinions on what needed to be done.
And just, is there a relationship to the National Urban Policy Program coordinated by the UN Habitat? Do you have any link to that?
It's in different countries, we have different engagements. On the countries that we are in certain countries that have engagement and also established plans like that, we do engage continuously with UN Habitats in urban plannings and issues related to urbanizations,
Mm.
especially in transport. So all of these things that we do in terms of public transportations and establishing a new roads or interventions related to transport, we constantly engage with UN Habitat in the country to make sure that we don't do duplications, or we make sure that it's also aligned with the plans that they establish for the governments and the country.
Mm. I really, part of your presentation I really enjoyed is how UNOP seems to really engage with the local community and empower them to kind of take ownership over their community and really teach them rather than kind of going in and doing things for them. I guess, so in places like Afghanistan where there is maybe higher tensions, how does the UN successfully deliver these projects? Is there a lot of collaboration, or how do you engage with maybe more, communities that are a bit more resistant and things like that?
Yes, I think like the through the community engagement and also a lot of works that we've done that we need to continue. I think it's like the most important things is that to build trust among the communities. So that's why when I said earlier, when we establish projects, the most important one of the most important team members in our project teams is the community mobilizers that really understand the local context and sensitivities within the community itself. Like what can we how to actually engage with them, and where is even like until like the small details, like where can we engage, like can we engage in the or can we go to doors, or is it acceptable for us to actually just walk in, or should we engage with the local authority first and then the local leaders within the village or within the communities, and to really understand that process before we engage with them is very important for us. And then after we understand that context, and then we plan on our engagements and communications plan. So that's why to do an assessment as part of our conflict sensitivity guidance, the most important things that we need to do first before we address or engage with the local community is an assessment on how to engage and how to communicate. What can we communicate and how we start our conversations. It's different, as simple as like to whom that we need to actually meet first before we engage with the whole broader communities. By understanding the process within the communities and understanding and respect the local culture
Mm.
is the things that we make sure that we have at the back of our minds on every engagement. So that's helped us to actually engage. And surprisingly, for the country like Afghanistan, we managed to implement significant amount of projects that engage lots of women. For example, when we established the previous examples that I showed, the projects done by funded by our Swedish donor, our targets is only 15% women to work in construction for these projects. Somehow, through our engagements and also our communications with different leaders, we managed to engage up to 38% of women in our engagement. In the most difficult part, it's just like when we understand how to communicate, when we understand the local context and culture, it's much easier for us to build trust among the community. It is
Mm.
hard and a lot of layers, more work to be done. But if we really want to make a change, that's the things that we need to do. And the project donors is actually kind enough for us to do 1% of the project budget just for gender mainstreaming initiative. Out of 40 millions that we receive from the Sweden, 1% of the project budget make us like change so much in terms of landscapes in the country, in terms of providing women with now you can see in rural areas in Afghanistan, like women can work as a construction laborer where this is like not happening before.
Mm.
So commitments by the donor, understanding the local needs, and understanding the local context is very important for us to actually continue engage with the local community.
Thank you very much, Afiq, for taking the time to present with us. I think that's about as much time as we have. But I think it's a really good reminder of how important infrastructure is, and especially engaging with communities. I think even in places like Melbourne, Australia, people often forget how important it is to engage with those communities and make sure that you have that trust between the community and the people delivering those projects. So thank you again so much for presenting. And just some last things. We do have a few more ITE events this month. So if anybody is interested, we have another webinar on the 21st of March, as well as our annual breakfast on the 22nd. Yes. So that's going to wrap up today's webinar. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. Apologies for it going over, but I really enjoyed this presentation. And again, thank you so much, Afiq, for taking the time. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely rest of the day and start of your day in Copenhagen, Afiq.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.